Hey, welcome to 12 Tone. A while back, fellow music YouTuber Adam Neely made a video answering a fan's question about the concept of negative time signatures and what he thought they might be, and since there's a lot of overlap between my audience and Adam's, I pretty quickly started getting questions asking what I thought about it, and since it's a well-known fact in the YouTube community that the best way to get clicks is to start a fight, I figured I'd try my hand at a response video. So first of all, I think Adam's answer was pretty good. I linked to it in the description and I recommend watching the video, but to summarize, he based his interpretation off of the idea of reversing the accent pattern. This can be a hard thing to do. Normally, as long as the pattern is consistent, it's pretty much impossible to not hear the accented part as the downbeat. Adam's video demonstrates this well. You can notate it differently, but in terms of what your audience hears, wherever the emphasis is gonna sound like beat 1. But the thing is, there's different kinds of accents. What I've been talking about are metric accents, which are the organized structure of strong and weak beats that our minds naturally create when we listen to a pulse. You can get a sense of where those strong beats are by placing chord changes on them, but you can't just move those accents to the weak beats because as soon as you do that, they suddenly start feeling like the strong ones. We haven't inverted the pattern, we've just changed where it starts. But Adam solves this problem with the help of dynamic accents. These are just the parts that you play with more emphasis, and they can go anywhere. In fact, most popular music relies on what's called a backbeat, where the drums primarily accent beats 2 and 4, which are traditionally considered weak. This means that most listeners are accustomed to hearing metric accents and dynamic accents on different parts of the bar, and we can use those familiarities to create this, where one of the patterns is backwards relative to the other, creating a sort of negative rhythm. I think this is a fairly satisfying answer to the question, what's a negative time signature, but my issue is it doesn't seem to address the inverse question. If you were trying to notate this, would you use a negative time signature to do it? I certainly wouldn't, I'd just write a drum line with a snare on beat 1. But there's no point dismissing Adam's answer if I don't have my own, so let's get into it. I can actually pinpoint the exact moment where Adam's reasoning diverges from mine. It's fairly early in the video when he says this.
Music is organized time, and time only goes in one direction. You can thank the laws of physics for that.
And he's absolutely right. You as a human being can't experience time in reverse. You're not a tachyon. But just because you can't play music backwards doesn't mean we can't figure out what it would sound like if you could, because there's at least one context in which time is completely reversible: the recording. For example, this completely random lick is in 4/4, and if we were to have our piano player play it backwards, it'd sound something like this. But that's not super interesting to us. If we wanted that, we could just notate it that way. To get a real negative 4/4 vibe, we'd have our piano player play it normally, then run the tape backwards. Or actually, if we really wanted to do it right, we'd probably have them read it backwards too, canceling out the backwards playing and resulting in this, which is the same lick we started with, just, well, negative. This brings to mind an old recording technique called backwards masking, or backmasking for short, where certain parts are played backwards in order to create sounds that couldn't otherwise be achieved. Backmasking is often lumped in with another phenomenon called phonetic reversal, where playing sounds backwards creates the impression of spoken words, perhaps most famously in the Beatles' Revolution No. 9, where this, number 9, played backwards becomes this, which kinda sounds like someone saying, "Turn me on, dead man." Kinda. Anyway, phonetic reversals are often unintentional, but backmasking can be used on purpose too. One of the first mainstream examples seems to be Rain, also by the Beatles, which ends with the sound of John singing the first line backwards. Could that be thought of as a part performed in negative 4/4? Well, this brings up an important point because obviously when John recorded it, he sang it forwards in time. Negative time signatures in this sense can't actually be performed. They can only be heard. But that's not damning. After all, negative numbers are a real thing, but unlike positive numbers, they can't be counted. I can have 3 elephants, but I can't have negative 3 elephants. That's meaningless. Negative 3 only exists as a sort of shadowy reflection of positive 3, and we can only find it by rotating that number around an axis. Similarly, the time signature negative 4/4 doesn't have to be a thing we can play in the real world. It's a reflection of positive 4/4, and it's fine if we can only understand it in relation to that actual countable object. But that doesn't mean it's useless. After all, modern mathematics would be a whole lot harder without negative numbers. We already saw that the Beatles use backmasking as a decoration, and plenty of other acts have done similar things, but few that I've found have fully integrated it into their composition, writing entire parts designed to be played backwards through the whole song. But even that doesn't seem like enough to justify negative time signatures. What really gets me excited here is the idea of reversible compositions, whole pieces of music that you can play forwards or backwards and still get a meaningful piece of art. Effectively, music you can multiply by -1. Imagine a reversible guitar solo played over backwards piano chords chords or two choirs singing past each other, each providing the wordless accompaniment to the other's lyrics. But we don't have to imagine what a piece of music like this would sound like, because Bach did it for us in his famous Canon Cankresans or Crab Canon. This is a piece of music written as a single melody where one voice plays it forwards while the other plays it backwards, creating counterpoint out of one line crossing itself through time. Bach's piece is a little long though, so here's a shorter one of my own composition. But what if, instead of one of the players playing the line backwards, we played one of the recordings backwards instead? That gives us this. Which I think visualizes the Crab Canon idea beautifully. It's one part played in two temporal directions. So is this a better answer than Adam's? I don't know, his is a whole lot more practical, but mine I think is a bit more rigorous, and honestly, rigorously impractical is kind of my whole thing. But while I'd never hand someone a chart written in my version of -4/4, it could be a useful tool in composing a score where it'd let me see the notes lining up with their positive counterparts in other voices while clearly marking which parts to record backwards. And the idea of temporally reversible music opens up interesting possibilities that don't seem to have been very thoroughly explored yet. Plus, you could probably combine the two ideas. Reversible parts would likely have their accents based on their forward components, so the negative versions would naturally have backwards accent patterns too. So what do you think? Which answer makes more sense to you? Did we both get it wrong? And if so, do you have your own interpretation? Or maybe you just think this is a pointless question and we should stop wasting our time with it. Leave a comment and let me know, unless it's the last one. I don't need that sort of negativity in my life. Anyway, thanks for watching, and thanks to our Patreon patrons for supporting us and making these videos possible. If you want to help out and get some sweet perks like sneak peeks of upcoming episodes, there's a link to our Patreon on screen now. You can also join our mailing list to find out about new episodes, like, share, comment, subscribe, and above all, and